Welcome back to Behind the Visor. It's your host, Stavros Katsantonis. And it was a quieter week this week with the free agency period sort of settling in, but still plenty of Canadian football content for everybody. Last week, we sort of took a bit of a hiatus. I was traveling around the country and wasn't able to get an episode in, so don't worry. We got a jam-packed episode for y'all today, but going into our first segment of the day, we continued shoring up the receiver room with two legitimate playmaking Canadians here in Hamilton. Obviously, bringing back initially, starting on the American side, we got Shamar Bridges, who, I mean, goodness, this is one of the guys that has just showed up week in and week out, been an absolute, just great teammate, great player on top of that. I mean, the guy, when his number is called, he's making the play. So super excited that he's back and re-signed here in Hamilton. And, just couldn't be more excited to see, what he does this year for our team. And then going on top of that, we bring in Curly Gittens Jr., CFL All-Star, Grey Cup champ. I mean, come on. Like, how can you not be excited about a guy like that who obviously has been around the league with Toronto, with Edmonton recently. And, again, one of those Canadians that can go and make big plays, proven all-star, proven champion, and adds into an already outstanding receiving corps here in Hamilton. And I mean, when you start naming off just the list of guys that we have so far, you got Kenny Lawler, Keandre Smith, Carrick Wheatfall, Curly, obviously, Shamar, Tyler Ternowski, Tyson Middlemost. I mean, the list goes on. We got some dogs this upcoming season for the year, and again, it's going to be a fun training camp. It's going to be a competitive training camp with those guys out there just because of the energy level that those guys bring, the playmaking ability that they all have. And at the end of the day, they say iron sharpens iron. So I think, when you look at excluding money, and players where they sign in free agency, is it for playtime? Is it for team success? Kind of how does it vary? And I think when you break it down, yes, I think I one end of the spectrum, players do, the money talks at the end of the day. That's what they always say, right? But I mean, on the other side, playtime is a big factor. So sometimes you could be looking at, all right, I may not be getting paid as much, but I'm a starter, I'm playing, I'm getting my reps, I'm getting targets, and the upside of maybe if you're an offensive player, the quarterback, that's generaling the entire offense, maybe a better fit for me as the receiver that I am, right? So I think there's both sides of it. There's also the side, like I said, the money side where, okay, you could just be getting thrown a pile of money and it doesn't matter you could have, the guy from the longest yard, Brucey, throwing you the football and you couldn't care less because you're making so much money. So again, that's both sides of it, but I wouldn't say there's never one specific reason on why, okay, this guy signed here. It's exactly for that reason, right? So there's always just different dynamics that go into it, and you never know what could happen at the end of the day during that free agency period. But I think you also look at the benefits of having Canadian talent at positions that aren't traditionally Canadian, and I mean the ratio breaker term, right? It's something that's always thrown around. You see all these different media companies and headlines that say ratio breaker. What does it actually mean, right? A lot of people, you have your traditional Canadian spots and spots that we've seen over the last couple of years kind of be those, Canadian starting spots, right? For the most part, you usually have one receiver, the three offensive linemen, if not four, depending on, what the availability is of your, obviously, roster ratio flexibility. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it's been predominantly safeties and occasionally field corner, not really so much okay, before they shortened the hashes in, which was I think 2022 season, which that was a rule change. We're not going to get into that too much, but before they shortened that in, the field corner spot was considered probably the easiest defensive back position to play because of its distance from the actual field of play. So a lot of times your field corner and your wide receiver that was out there were kind of your Canadian guys. It was like, all right, let's just put the Canadian guys out there. We don't got to worry about them. And, they're either running a go or a comeback, whatever you want to call that. So that's where most of the Canadian corners were playing. Now with this ratio breaker term, you get into positions that aren't commonly played by Canadians, where obviously Canadians can for sure play them. It's just for whatever reason they haven't been played there, given the opportunity to play there in years previous. But I would say now probably the field corner is a ratio breaker position. I mean, you look at guys like Tyrell Ford, who is the highest paid DB in the league, playmaker, field corner, kind of a one-of-one guy. Adrian Green, who's coming up the ranks out in Calgary. Again, another field corner where you haven't seen as many Canadians play there and have success game after game. So I would say field corner is probably one of those growing positions. I think the defensive end position can definitely be a ratio breaking position group, just because most DNs are coming up from the States and are American guys. But again, you see guys like Matthew Betts who have exploded over the last couple of years with, just the ability to get to the quarterback and put pressure on those offenses. And that's why those guys get paid a lot of money, right? The trenches. And then I think flipping over, kind of looking at the offensive side of the ball and, the positions that are ratio breaking there. And I think you can't not say running back, right? You look at what Brady Oliveira's done over the last few years, the consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons. And on top of that, him being a Canadian and now one of the highest paid, obviously, running back, probably one of the top. I think he's probably top 10. If let's exile the quarterbacks out of the highest paid conversation, because they're always going to be in a league of their own. But I would say outside of the quarterback position, he's top 5 for sure in highest paid, and obviously he deserves that because of what he's done on the field. The film doesn't lie at the end of the day. So I would say definitely running back. You don't find a lot of high quality, really good, every down Canadian running backs in this league, right? It's starting to grow a little bit, but again, you just don't see it that often. So I think that's why those positions can be termed as, I guess, ratio breakers. I think in that same breath, you could say the boundary side wide receiver that's on the ball over there are basically both your boundary side receivers. Those are usually your 2 best receivers over there and have been predominantly American positions. So if you could get guys over there that can play those positions and demand that sort of, one-on-one top target type of receiver, I mean, you can definitely argue, I think, that Justin McInnis is one of those guys in BC. I know they use him in the waggle, use him on the ball. A lot of guys get thrown in different positions anyway. You never see most of these offenses, they move the receivers around just to kind of get them in a matchup that they want to see, whether it's a different DB that isn't used to covering that type of guy. So I would definitely say that that ratio breaking term, it's going to be beneficial to have a guy at any of those positions that can play those spots. But then again, you also have to consider the depth part of it, right? You have to have someone that can back that guy up and get you through a game, if not maybe 5 or 6 games if your starter is injured. So that's sometimes where I think you run into the problem, where if you don't have good depth at those positions, at any of your Canadian positions, it can kind of put you in either trouble to play a Canadian there, in terms of just like, all right, day 1 training camp, we're starting a Canadian at running back. Well, if you don't have the depth there, that's not even going to be a consideration, right? So I think the more Canadians continue to, again, just get better and better as they come into the league, right? We've seen a lot of young Canadians build and grow in this game, and I think that's only going to push the envelope for where the next Canadian starter is going to be next. I mean, shoot, who would have thought we would have had a Canadian starting quarterback in the league? That's always been the taboo thing, but you look at what Nathan Rourke's been doing. Trey Ford obviously has helped break that barrier as well. So I think, the sky's the limit when it comes to the Canadian talent and where it goes from there. But with that being said, let's move on to our second segment with free agency being done. What's next? Everybody wants to know what's the next CFL thing that we got to look forward to. But kind of as mentioned, things have cooled off with the free agency front. But have you ever wondered what happens between now and the season? I think you always look at, obviously there's training for players, but the whole offseason calendar can always seem like there's not a whole lot going on. But then it's like you get into one, like that April month, right? When combine finishes just in that late March time, and then it's April and it's the draft. So I think, with that, from a non-player standpoint, the offseason is always ongoing for the front office, the coaching staffs, the personnel, all that sort of stuff, because again, you're trying to build your team in that free agency period. And then after free agency ends, you're building obviously your Canadian content, your free agents that are becoming available, and then you're also building your camp rosters for training camp once it comes in May. So that's kind of a never-ending process, especially for them, because again, you got those league meetings in January, then it's free agency February, which that kind of goes together. Maybe we shouldn't change free agency, but and then March comes around, it's the combine, and then it's April, and you've got the draft, and then May is training camp, and then obviously we know what happens June to November. So I would say that's kind of how it goes for them as a player. You're really looking at just the off-season training, the rest, the recovery. The biggest thing obviously in that is those first couple weeks after the season ends, and you're trying to nurse back to the 100% health, really, at the end of the day, because a 18-game season plus 3 bye weeks and 2 preseason games, that can take a toll on your body. And if you're not taking care of that those first couple weeks, so those first 2 or 3 months of the offseason, it can kind of put you not at a disadvantage, I'll say, but just at a slower start to build to where you want to be come training camp in May. So I think taking advantage of that, right off the bat is probably the most important thing. And then once you do hit that training phase, whether it's in that December or January month, for us, it was kind of more that January month where you really hit the ground running. I think you got to make sure that you're in a program that is prepping you for the CFL season, right? Like a lot of these training programs, and I've been through a few of them, both sides of the border, all that sort of stuff. And for the most part, all of my trainings have been really good in the offseason. They've always prepared me, and I think even now more than before, with our in-house strength and conditioning coach, Marcellus, who is a one-on-one guy, really understands. Obviously, he played in the CFL, so he understands what that body feels like when you get to week 9, let alone week 17. So he really preps the program to really prepare you for that CFL season. Obviously, the training camp and the grueling aspects of that and what that brings, and then obviously the maintenance of the actual season and being ready to play and peaking at the right time, all that sort of stuff. So I would say that's one of the biggest things is that January to basically April are going to be your key off-season training months, where you're putting in all the work, making sure that you're getting your body ready to go to where it needs to be once training camp comes. Because like we've said, and I'm sure I've said it on this podcast, I've said it on many interviews before, but the most important thing once you get to training camp is being available. Obviously, you want to perform at your highest level and make a ton of plays. But if you're not out there practicing and getting that film out there to be evaluated, it's not going to be a very long career for you. So I think Marcellus does an awesome job of that. And I'm sure there's a lot of other trainers around the league that, put in the type of, well, actually, I don't know if there's many trainers that put in the work that he puts in day in and day out to ensure that we are going to be elite athletes at the end of the day. But again, he's awesome in what he does, and that training it's big. And then you look at the coaching aspect of it, right? All the coaches are definitely, I would say probably, again, I'm not a coach, but I would just assume this is how most coaches do kind of the prep for the offseason. But they're probably definitely looking at, kind of their systems, their schemes, their playbooks, from a returning coach standpoint, maybe just a sharpening of the axe when it comes to the scheme and what they're doing. Little small tweaks, especially if you were a team that was kind of on the cusp of, whether it was like us going to the Grey Cup or, just making the playoffs maybe, or, those type of things. I think it's a sort of refining, maybe adding a few tweaks here and there, and then obviously catering to the athletes that you have in the building, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, it's the players that are playing. So you got to make sure that you scheme up to who you have, right? Having a 6'5", 4'4" receiver is different than having, a 5'11" or 5'10" 4'4" receiver, right? There's different things that you can do with those type of guys. So I think it's always just a refining process when it comes to that. And then from a new coach's standpoint, again, it's always about establishing their culture, I think very, very quick. Because at the end of the day, that's who the players are going to look to is, the boss man, and how he conducts himself, how he carries himself, and the culture that's in the building. And that always starts with the coach, and then it's obviously disseminated through the players. And again, the players take the reins with that and decide, where they're going to go from there. So I think that's kind of how the offseason kind of looks from a coach's, players, front office personnel sort of look. And then obviously if you're a free agent, right, or draftee, that's kind of how that process works. And then, it's training camp and you're getting after it and you're getting ready to go. So I think, trying to focus on how this is the last lull before the CFL football season is back. Again, this is basically it. I mean, as of recording this podcast, it's basically the end of February. We're going to get into March, which strikes combine season. I think the first combines kick off next week. The first one is in Waterloo, which is kind of the, I guess, regional invitational combine where guys can get invited to the main combine, but which I will be at. I'll be there. We'll cover this a little bit later, but I got accepted in the CFL Mentorship Program, so I'll be out there next week as well, kind of helping out and learning some great skills. But again, that's at the end of the show. But yeah, once kind of March is over, it's like, dang, we only have 30 days before training camp starts, right? Like once March hits, it's just over 60-something days until training camp hits. I mean, like I said, we're closer to this next season than we were to when the Grey Cup was played. So if my math serves me right, which I think it does, if today's February 25th, yeah, we should be officially, once March hits, we'll be officially closer to the 2026 season than we were to the 2025 season. So it's exciting. I can't wait for the season to start and just get into training camp and just get back with the guys and, again, just start building for what's going to be, I believe, to be a great 2026 season for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But with that being said, we're going into segment 3. We're going to talk some broadcasting and rule changes a little bit. Well, I think I got to tell you what, had no lull, and the Olympics, right? I mean, we got to cover kind of that Sunday game, Team Canada versus Team USA, and I mean, that was an insane gold medal game. Obviously, I won't say I'm impartial, but I'm also a dual citizen, so it's hard to pick a side, but I actually tweeted this out. I've always been a Team Canada hockey fan ever since I was a kid. It's always been the team I've cheered for, and maybe that's just because hockey's Canada's sport, and it's just so popular here, but it was a tough game. I'm a big Sidney Crosby fan. That's my favorite hockey player of all time since I was a kid, so it was a little heartbreaking to not see him be able to play. Obviously, we know all too well what injuries can do, to your body when you're getting ready to play a game, and the decision that has to be made, when you're a game time decision. But what a crazy game. I mean, I think the entire Olympic broadcast felt super clean. And is it time for the CFL to return to CBC? I don't know. Maybe Sportsnet. Who knows? I know. This is what I do know. I do know that the broadcasting deal is up at the end of this season. So will we see the CFL go on to a different partner in whole, or maybe, I don't know, a couple different broadcasting partners? Who knows? You never know with today's streaming world and kind of how, I guess, the landscape of that looks. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be mistaken because I'm mistaken a lot, but I think CBC is owned by Bell Media, and Bell Media owns TSN. So I don't know if if TSN specifically has the rights for just CFL, because I know there were some games, I think, on CTV, which I also think is a Bell Media owned, and I could be wrong. CBC could be owned by Rogers. And I didn't do my research on that before writing this. So, again, I think it'd be great to really see how that plays out at the end of the day. Obviously, you got to love competition. You got to be able to, I think, see different viewpoints from the broadcasting perspective. And obviously, there's a financial number that is going to decide that at the end of the day. But it'll be really interesting to see kind of how that's broken up, if it is at all, when it comes to every single game being on one platform and being monopolized in that way, or if it gets broken up to maybe, hey, here's a section of games that'll be on TSN, here's a section that'll be on CBC, Sportsnet, maybe Amazon Prime, maybe Netflix. I mean, you have all these different streaming companies that are going to, the live sports TV packages. I mean, you see it down south all the time with games being on, Prime, Red Zone, all that sort of stuff. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out over the next couple months. But obviously things are going to look a little different once the 2026 year kicks off, starting with obviously the rules. We have the Rouge that has been eliminated for missed kicks, which I personally, and I won't coin I'm not going to say I'm not a CFL traditionalist, but I also didn't, just flat out, I'm going to be honest. I didn't grow up watching the CFL. I didn't grow up learning about the CFL until probably my first CFL game I watched was like in high school. And then obviously I played Canadian football rules at UBC. But I won't necessarily say I'm a traditionalist when it comes to the actual rule changes. But this one I do like. I think to reward a missed kick, and you get a point for it, I just don't think that's right. It doesn't make sense for me. Where it would make sense for me, if you could tell me, or if you could say, and I've talked about this with some of my teammates previously, but if you could say, hey, you know what? You tell the referee before you kick it, we're declaring that we're going to miss it, and you're going to give us a point for that. By all means, keep the rouge. Or if you say, hey, we're going for the field goal, we're going for 3 points. Awesome. But to miss and then get bailed out by the ball going through the end zone, I just don't agree with that. I don't think it's a good rule. I think, again, if it could be the same way if you were punting. If you said, hey, we're punting and we know our punter has a good leg and we need the point, okay, you got to declare. Tell the referee, hey, we're kicking it. And if it goes through the back of the end zone, that's a point. Now, obviously, that won't even matter in this 2026 year because they've removed that rule entirely. So now for the 2026 season, the rouge can only happen if the ball is, punted into the end zone, the returner catches it and is tackled in the end zone. Now, if you punt it and it goes out the back of the end zone or the side, there's no point rewarded for that. So I think that'll bring an interesting dynamic into the return game and also have coaches just put a lot more thought into when and when not to return the football if you're in the end zone, because obviously there will be the field position part. If you do give up the point, you're going to get it probably at the 40-yard line, which is my guess, and kind of how it goes on from there. But that's always been kind of my thought process on it. I just don't agree with, hey, you missed a field goal and now we just won the game. I mean, everyone's seen the sort of viral plays where enter in the CFL team and they went off a missed field goal. I think it was the Toronto, maybe SAS game. And it's just, it just doesn't sit right with me. But the other one that just makes the most sense is the benches on opposite sides. And I wouldn't say I necessarily noticed more trash talk when the benches were on the same side. I mean, there's always going to be trash talk. If there's a player and he's near the bench, our guys are going to be on that guy and that guy's going to be beaking back, to our sideline. So I won't say it's going to decrease that because guys are always going to talk trash, but I think it'll definitely decrease the possibility of altercations where those guys are, if they score at the far end zone or they're on the far end zone and they're running back past our sideline. It just eliminates that ability for there just to be any further escalation. But also the coaches do a good job of managing it. Obviously the referees all stand there on the way back, but that doesn't mean that one referee can stop 5 guys that are, running along the sideline, in the event of an altercation. So I like this rule. I think that should have changed a long time ago. It just makes the most sense. Where I think it won't necessarily hurt the game, but I think that broadcasting, partnership value from, if you ever look on the actual game, there's a lot of partners, paid sponsorships that are on those sides. So you're also going to lose those from that standpoint. So how that gets replaced and what the actual monetary value of, let's say in between the 30-yard lines of, paid marketing, what that cost, I guess we'll see kind of how that goes when the league revenue comes out at the end of the year and if that is significantly altered. But you also still have the, on-camera ads that are played that are kind of overlaid on the screen. So I'm sure there'll always be a way to, figure that out. And, again, most times, I guess if you think about it, most times the ball's starting at the 40-yard line. So that's where most of the value is. So that's kind of where you lose it. But again, we'll see kind of how that plays out in this year. And then obviously the 2027 yardage difference that's going to be changing, and U Sports has not mentioned any sort of rule change and how this will impact U Sport players making the adjustment to the CFL, which is for right now the 110 yards versus 100 yards. But, will we ultimately see more Canadian NCAA talent come north in the future? I guess that remains to be seen. And that's always the thing, right? If those guys don't make it to the NFL or don't get a shot, they're always going to get drafted. But, the guys that are playing U Sports are just as good, if not better, because they're getting the reps at the actual game part of it. So, that just comes down to a preference from, a personnel standpoint. So I don't think that really will change it too much. From whether or not I like the rule changes, I'm going to keep it just at 2026 because we're not in 27 yet, and we don't even know if that's official. We can't say it's official until it happens, right? I would say I agree with most of the rule changes. I think that the coolest one that we're going to see is probably the 35-second play clock, and then obviously keeping the 3-minute play clock, which I wouldn't say I'm on either side about, but it'll just be interesting to see kind of how we practice it and implement that as a team. And again, just train for it, and we'll see. We'll see. We're gonna have to see who's in shape, right? It's a 35-second play clock, so we'll see what happens on that one, and where it goes from there. But going into our fourth segment, talking the CFLPA Mentorship Program. And again, like I said, you may not seen that I was selected among 6 other CFL players to this league mentorship program. And I get it may be a little bit unknown. So let me kind of break it down for you and kind of how, I guess, this mentorship program goes, how you get accepted, how, all that, the application process, all of it. So basically what I had to do was fill out an application, upload a resume, kind of, just like a normal job, and just, go through an interview process to kind of get into this program. And it was sent out by the CFLPA, I think back in January, was like kind of the application program, and then did some meetings with the league and some officials from the CFLPA to kind of, I guess, show why I should be in the program or why I wanted to be in the program. And I think it's a really cool program. I think they've been doing it for about 5 years now, and it's just a way for players to find out, maybe they know, like, I think the biggest thing is most football players know they want to be in football to some extent, right? You want to stay around the game. You love it that much, and you just can't see yourself doing anything else other than football. So I think this program gives that opportunity to players where they can kind of really see behind the lens, behind the visor. I'll coin that one again. Drink. We might have to start playing that game, or put a dollar into the hat every time I say behind the visor, and use it as a. I just did it again, but you use it as a as a headline. But I think this program really gives players the ability to see, all right, what am I interested in? Maybe I'm interested in something that is within the league, whether it's, the partnership side of the league, the marketing, the operations, the broadcasting rights. There's so many avenues that actually goes into how the CFLs actually run. And I think no better than a person that's a player in the league to maybe transition into one of those positions as someone that has been there, can give kind of the pros and cons of what their experience was, and maybe share something new that the league can do, to do better. Or maybe from the other side of the lens, for a player to learn from the league and be like, oh, I didn't even know that this is what it actually takes to run this business. So I think for me, the biggest reason why I wanted to do it was just to learn obviously more about the league and learn more about myself and kind of what the future holds for me. Whether, I know a lot of you have seen me do kind of the broadcasting stuff with TSN over last season, but also maybe it's something on the business side. Maybe it's Commissioner Stavros 30 years from now. I don't know, 2010, 15, whenever, our great Commissioner Johnson decides to retire. Maybe it's Stavros for commissioner, when it's all said and done. I don't know, but I think that's the great thing about this program, is to be able to go and learn about, what's actually going on behind the scenes and all it takes to run the CFL business. Again, could just spark my interest in something. And then you also get a mentor through this program, that's someone that's working at the CFL that you get to get on a call with, or, go grab lunch with once a month and pick their brain and just learn more about what you want to do, how you want to grow, and how you want to learn. So I'm really excited about the program. And that's kind of how I, got involved with it. And again, I'm just really excited. That's all starting next week. So I don't know if I'll have too much to really share in next week's episode regarding this. I think it'll be the following week when I can really break down, everything that I did. But again, I'm super excited, super grateful that the CFL is bringing this program back year after year and bringing, I think, like I said, we have 6 guys that are players or former players in this league that are doing it. So again, it's always great to see that, that joint structure from the PA, from the CFL, and again, just providing the avenue for players to just have a future in football, right? I think we talk about so much like the mental health of guys and that sort of stuff. And I think this is important because it gives guys just that maybe peace of mind to say, hey, you know what, like, maybe this week or whatever, or however it works, determines like, hey, like, okay, I got closure on, if it's someone that's retired with football or someone who's getting ready to retire, I got closure on the fact of playing football, and now I have a roadmap that I can create on where I'm going to go from here, whether it's within the league, with one of the league partners, one of the teams. And I think it just gives that unique insight, to learn and grow in that end from the business side. So with that being said, let's get into our quick hits, close out the show, all that good stuff. We got touchdown Kelowna as our quick hit number 1. 2 games in Kelowna this year. We got the Lions versus the Elks and the Lions versus the Stamps. Obviously, due to the fact that we have the World Cup happening this year, and they're not letting BC use that stadium no matter what. So they're playing in Kelowna. From what I've heard, there's about 18,000 tickets available for each game, which I think is awesome. I mean, Kelowna has a near and dear place to my heart. I've spent many Christmases up there, summers. I got a lot of family out there. If anyone is watching this and is going to that game, make sure you guys go to Olympia Taverna. That is my uncle's restaurant, aunt and uncle's, plural. It's a family restaurant, that's been owned and operated there for many, many years in the Kelowna area. So please go in there, tell them Stavros sent you, and just have some great Greek food before you go to that game. With that, we got quick hit number 2. The Riders have launched a lottery for the new Mosaic tailgating experience for season ticket holders. Again, I think that's pretty cool. I think the problem that had happened there was provincially, there was basically illegal to tailgate outside the stadium. So I think they were working closely with the provincial government to be able to allow tailgating for season ticket holders. I've seen a few gripes about, it's $500, from both ends, both gripes and both pros about it being $500. And I think that comes out to like 50 bucks a game for 9 games, maybe less. And, have a couple drinks, have some hot dogs, then roll into the game and watch. Obviously the Riders put on a great show out there in Saskatchewan. So that's pretty cool that they're doing that. I know we got tailgating here in Hamilton within a block of the stadium. So it's always great to see our fans just tailgating there, and then everyone just making the trek over to the stadium for the actual game. So that'll be cool and something to monitor out in Saskatchewan for our Saskatchewan viewers. With our next quick hit, we have a plethora of CFL retires, and I mean, this is also part of the game, right? Guys retire every year, but a lot of big names. We got Dominique Rhymes, Drew Wolatarski, Stephen Dunbar Jr., and Adam Auclair, just to name a few, calling it a career. And again, just wishing those guys the best in their future, whether it's in football, whether it's in business, whatever it is. Again, just great players all around. I mean, Rhymes has been a staple in the league as a receiver for the last since before I got in the league. Same with Drew Wolatarski, again, a great teammate of mine from this past season. Same with Stephen Dunbar, dude that just shows up to work every day and puts in the work, a guy that is going to just outwork you at the end of the day. And then Adam Auclair, a guy I came into the league with, who has been a defensive and special team standout. Again, just giving hats off to them for successful careers and wishing them the best in their future endeavors. Next quick hit, we got former NFL receiver Andy Isabella signing with the Ottawa Red Blacks. Does he become the fastest CFL player in the league? He ran a 4.31, which is blazing fast. I would say, I don't know. Again, you're talking to a guy that doesn't run 4.3, so I don't even get to enter this conversation. But we have a lot of fast guys in this league, and I think some of the other guys I say that have legit 4.2, 4.3 speed. I mean, Lawrence Woods is one of those guys that comes to mind. I know he's currently a free agent, but that dude was always 4.3 anytime I talked to him. Obviously, our other former returner, Isaiah Wooden, was 4.3, maybe 4.2. Who knows? These guys are lightning fast. And then we could definitely argue that Janarian Grant has that 4.3 speed. I mean, Tyreek McAllister, who played with the TiCats a few years ago, one of my teammates, 4.3 speed. Chandler Worthy. I'm sure Fletcher has a, or is it Fletcher? No, Letcher. It's because Montreal had a Fletcher and a Letcher, but I think it's James Letcher Jr., if I'm getting that right. Again, had that 4.3 speed. Man, it's a different class with some of those returners. Those guys are lightning fast. But again, love to see the speed coming to the CFL, and we'll see how it works out, once he gets into training camp. And then here we go, quick hit. I don't even know what we're at now. We're probably at number 5, maybe number 6. Who knows? But I wanted to just give a quick recruiting advice on my experience being recruited to UBC, and kind of maybe some advice or tips that I could give to players looking to make the leap up here to the Great White North. And for me personally, again, I'm going to try to sum this up as quickly as possible. But basically, my quick hit story, I started out, obviously, I was playing high school football in California, found out I was Canadian. Well, I already knew I was Canadian, but found out I could go play college football in Canada. My dad played at the University of Calgary. He played JUCO ball down in Bakersfield. That's how I ended up there. But he sent my film up to UBC and University of Calgary, started that recruiting process. They were both interested. I got invited to come up to UBC spring camp where they bring players up. I obviously didn't get to participate in it, but just kind of came out on a visit. Beautiful campus out at UBC, probably the most, if not the best, one of the best in the world from a campus standpoint. And then obviously their academics speak for themselves. But went up there for a visit, decided to commit, sign a letter of intent, all that good jazz, got a scholarship, and ended up playing 4 years there, some of the best 4 years of my life there in Vancouver at UBC. But, I mean, just some of the advice or tips that I would give to young players, whether you're Canadian or American, and I think here's actually the biggest secret for Americans that are playing in the United States. Come up to Canada and get your degree, play football, spend 4 years, and you now qualify as a national in the Canadian Football League. You can get drafted. It's the most valuable thing to be a national, have that Canadian passport, if you want to call it. But all you got to do is come up here and play. Most schools offer a waiver for American guys coming up, so I think they get like 1 or 2 a year, just depending. You'll have to check with those specific coaches. But shoot, to come up, get your degree up here from really good institutions. Get it at a cheaper rate too. If your parents are paying USD to Canadian, I mean, you're going to get a way cheaper degree than you probably would either at an in-state big university or even an out-of-state university. So I would say that's the biggest tip. And then obviously you're just learning the CFL game, getting reps. That'll prepare you for the CFL at the end of the day. But I think it's invaluable to play up here at the U Sports level, learn a whole lot of good stuff, and then make your way into the CFL. And who knows, maybe the NFL too. There's been a few guys that have made the jump from U Sports to the NFL, so that door is always open. But again, I think it's a great look to come up here, play, U Sports football. Maybe you'll win a national championship like I did and some of my teammates did, and who knows? The sky's the limit from there. But we got to pull this up for my final quick hit. We're going way over here, but I think we got to roll this clip. We got to see this. My guy DaShaun Amos, I'm not putting you on blast, but we got to watch this clip real quick. Let's just see what he had to say recently, because I wasn't able to comment on this last week. Roll the clip.
Toronto is so much better than Hamilton because it's Toronto.
He's a jokester. If y'all know Amos, he's a jokester, and I'm not gonna give him too much flack, other than the fact that we're gonna burn this card now just because you said that. I'm not gonna give this to you. We're burning it. You're not. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I love Amos. Amos knows he's one of my favorite teammates that I've been able to play with, a leader. And Amos is gonna play into this rivalry, so he can go up the QEW all he wants, just to lose to us 3 times this season. I mean, that's what we're planning to do this season. So, I mean, maybe we have to challenge Amos to a little INT bet for the Battle of the QEW. Whoever gets the first pick, maybe the loser has to wear the winner's jersey. Amos, you got to let me know, man. We might have to do that. But no, it's always love to Amos, until we play Toronto, obviously. But if he's playing any other team, he can make as many plays as he wants. He knows that. He knows how I feel about that. But with that being said, we appreciate y'all for checking out today's episode. You guys deserved a longer episode today after we weren't here last week. But with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed it. Do all the things you do. Subscribe, comment, like, I don't have to tell you all that. And we'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.